Welcome to JT Scary Tales. 3 true roommate horror stories that will make you fear moving in. Moving in with a new roommate should be a fresh start, but what if that fresh start turns into a living nightmare? What if the person you share a home with is hiding a dark secret? Tonight, we bring you 3 terrifying true stories of roommates from hell, stories of obsession, betrayal, and pure horror. Lock your doors, check your walls, and whatever you do, don't ignore the signs. Because sometimes, the real danger isn't outside your home, it's already inside. Story 1. The Roommate. Moving in with a new roommate was supposed to be a fresh start. After a messy breakup and the end of my lease, I needed a place fast. When I found Lena's ad for a room in an old but charming 2-bedroom apartment, it felt like luck. The hardwood floors, vintage decor, and a small balcony overlooking the city made it feel warm and inviting. Lena was quiet, almost too quiet. She had an odd, withdrawn demeanor, with dark circles under her eyes and a gaze that lingered just a little too long. But I brushed it off. Everyone has their quirks. The first night, as I was unpacking, I heard something strange, a faint, rhythmic scraping noise coming from the walls, like nails dragging against plaster. I froze, listening. It stopped abruptly. I pressed my ear against the wall. "Is someone there?" I whispered. Silence. At breakfast the next morning, I casually mentioned it. "Hey, do you ever hear weird noises at night? Like scratching?" Lena paused, her spoon hovering over her cereal. "It's an old building," she said flatly. "It makes sounds." Then she stared at me, unblinking, for a beat too long before returning to her meal. Something was watching. The noises didn't stop. In fact, they got worse. Some nights, they were soft, almost distant, but other nights, the sound moved, scraping against different walls. Closer. One evening, as I was setting up my desk, I noticed something disturbing. Tiny holes in the walls, barely noticeable, but positioned at unsettling angles, one facing my bed, another aimed at the bathroom. My stomach twisted. Peering into one, I saw only darkness. Someone, or something, was watching me. I grabbed tape and paper and covered them up. But the next morning, the coverings were gone, and the holes looked wider. A sick feeling crept into my gut. I confronted Lena that night. "Did you remove the paper I put on my walls?" She didn't look up from her book. "Why would I go into your room?" Her voice was eerily calm. "Maybe you imagined putting them up." Her eyes met mine. She smiled. I locked my door that night. A presence in the dark. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of scratching. Louder, more frantic, right behind my headboard. I sat up, my skin crawling. I whispered, "Who are you? What do you want?" Silence. Then, a faint giggle. I shot out of bed and turned on the light. The room was empty, but my closet door was slightly ajar. Steeling myself, I walked over and yanked it open. My heart nearly stopped. Some of my clothes were missing. Hours later, they reappeared, folded neatly on my bed. They smelled different, damp, with a sickly sweet scent, almost rotten. I decided to stay out late the next day. Avoiding the apartment, at a coffee shop, I opened my laptop, trying to distract myself. But as soon as I logged in, the webcam light flickered on. A message popped up on the screen. "Why don't you want me to see you?" I slammed my laptop shut. My breath came in sharp gasps. Who was watching me? She was in my room. I couldn't stay there anymore. That night, I locked my bedroom door and pushed a chair against it. Exhausted, I collapsed onto my bed, gripping a kitchen knife under my pillow. Somewhere in the haze of sleep, I felt it, a presence. My eyes fluttered open. Lena stood at the foot of my bed. The dim glow of streetlights illuminated her silhouette. "Lena," I whispered, my voice shaky. "What are you doing?" She tilted her head. "You were screaming." Her voice was eerily soft. "I wanted to make sure you were okay." I hadn't screamed. "Please get out," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She lingered. Then, without another word, she slipped out of the room. I didn't sleep after that. The truth on the flash drive. Morning couldn't come fast enough. I decided to leave by nightfall. As I packed, something clattered to the floor, a small, unmarked flash drive. I didn't recognize it. Curiosity overrode caution. I plugged it into my laptop. A single folder appeared. "For Sarah." My stomach dropped. Dozens of video files filled the screen, each labeled with a date. Heart pounding. I clicked the most recent one. The footage was grainy. Night vision. My bedroom. I watched myself sleeping, tossing, turning. The timestamp was from last night. My breath hitched as the camera panned. Lena stood in the corner, watching me. Her eyes gleamed unnaturally in the infrared light. A cold sweat broke over my skin. I clicked another file. This one showed me in the bathroom, undressing for a shower. My hands trembled as I scrolled down. One last file. Tonight. With shaking fingers, I opened it. It was live. A direct feed of my room. The camera angle was from inside the wall. The screen flickered. A message appeared. I'm coming. A loud thud came from the hallway. I grabbed my phone, dialing 911. But no signal. The lights flickered, then went out. The doorknob rattled. Her voice, distorted, seeped through the darkness. Let me in. The escape. Panic surged through me. I backed against the window. Then, the door creaked open. It shouldn't have. I had locked it. Lena stepped inside. But something was wrong. Her limbs seemed too long. Her joints bent at unnatural angles. Her eyes were bottomless pits. You shouldn't have tried to leave, she whispered. I screamed. Bolting past her, I raced down the hallway. But behind me, I heard it. The scratching. It wasn't just from the walls anymore. It was everywhere. I reached the living room, yanking at the front door, but it wouldn't budge. Lena's laughter echoed behind me. Desperate, I grabbed a chair and hurled it at the window. Glass shattered, spraying into the cold night air. I scrambled through, cutting my arms and legs, and ran. I didn't stop running until I reached a gas station. Breathless and shaking, the clerk stared at me, wide-eyed. Are you okay? I tried to speak, but my words tumbled out in broken gasps. The police arrived minutes later. I told them everything, about Lena, the videos, the flash drive. But when they investigated, the apartment was abandoned. Had been for years. There was no furniture, no belongings, no Lena, just dust-covered floors and peeling walls. But in the center of the living room, they found one thing, a vintage camcorder, pointing toward the door. Attached to it was a single note, written in handwriting that looked just like mine. Thank you for the performance. I never went back. Story 2. The woman I trusted. It's terrifying how close someone can get to you, how they can slowly, methodically, tighten their grip on your life without you ever realizing it. For me, that person was Julia. She wasn't my blood relative, but she might as well have been. For nearly 20 years, she was my best friend, my sister in every way that mattered. Julia was there when I got married, when I had my son, Daniel, and even when my husband left me. Through every heartbreak and hardship, she stood beside me. So, when I had hip surgery and needed help around the house, I didn't think twice about letting her move in. I trusted her. I trusted her with my home, with my son, with my life, and that nearly cost me everything. The sickness. It started slowly. First, just a bit of fatigue. Then, headaches, dizziness. It had been weeks since my surgery, but I felt worse than ever. No matter how much I rested, I never got better. The exhaustion was unbearable, creeping into my bones like poison. Doctor visits became routine, but every test came back the same. Nothing is wrong with you. But something was wrong, and it was getting worse. Julia was always there, taking care of me. She cooked my meals, brought me tea, and made sure I took my medication. I told myself that I was lucky to have her. But then, I started noticing things. Strange things. Little moments that didn't add up. Like the way Julia would get nervous around Daniel. At first, I thought I imagined it. But the more I paid attention, the more I saw it. How her hands would fidget when Daniel walked in. How she would quickly change the subject whenever I mentioned him. One night, as I lay in bed, too weak to move, I overheard her talking to someone on the phone. Her voice was low, urgent. I'm going to take him away. Forever. A cold wave of nausea washed over me. Who was she talking to? Who was she planning to take? My mind screamed the answer before I could push it away. Daniel. The truth. The next day, Daniel came to me, his face tense. Mom, he said, we need to talk. I braced myself. I know you're sick, But I think something's really wrong with Julia. My stomach clenched. She keeps telling me things. He continued, his voice unsteady. Weird things. How I should be with her. Not you. That you're too weak to take care of me anymore. My hands trembled as I reached for his. Daniel, listen to me. Has she ever done anything to you? He hesitated. She keeps coming into my room at night. Just watching me. I felt like I was going to be sick. I had brushed off my concerns for too long. I had ignored the signs. I had to do something. That night, when Julia went out, Daniel and I searched her room. At first, there was nothing unusual, just neatly folded clothes. A bookshelf, some old letters. Then we found the box. Inside, there were vials, small glass containers with strange labels I didn't recognize. Next to them, a pile of medical records, my medical records. Daniel held up one of the vials. His face pale. Mom, he said, voice shaking. I think she's been poisoning you. I couldn't breathe. My mind raced back to the past few months, the constant fatigue. The unexplained illness. The way Julia insisted on making my food, my tea, my medication. It was her. It had always been her. She wasn't taking care of me. She was killing me. The escape. Panic surged through me. I called an old friend. Dr. Mason. Someone I knew I could trust. I begged her to run tests, anything to confirm what I already knew. The results shattered what little remained of my world. The bacteria in my system wasn't natural. It had been introduced. Repeatedly. Julia had been slipping something into my food for months, slowly breaking my body down. Making me too weak to fight back. And why? Because she wanted my son. She wanted my life. I felt like I was drowning. But I didn't have time to fall apart. Because Julia was coming back. Dr. Mason called the authorities while Daniel and I locked the doors. Barricading ourselves inside, my hands shook as I gripped my phone. My body still weak from the months of poisoning. The minutes stretched into eternity. Then, the doorknob rattled. She was here. Let me in. Julia called softly. Why is the door locked? Daniel stood beside me, his fists clenched. Mom, he whispered. She can't know we found out. I took a shaky breath and forced my voice to stay steady. I'm not feeling well, Julia, I said through the door. I need to rest. Silence. Then, you don't need to fight it anymore. You know. My blood ran cold. It would be easier if you just let go. A sharp knock. Then another. And another. The pounding grew louder, more frantic. Daniel, I whispered, run to the back door. Just as he turned, the front door burst open. The nightmare ends. She stood in the doorway, eyes wild, breathing hard. You should have just let it happen. She hissed. My entire body screamed at me to move. But I was too weak. Daniel wasn't. Before she could take another step, he lunged, knocking her off balance. She hit the ground with a shriek. Then, flashing red and blue lights flooded the room. The police stormed in. Julia didn't even fight them. She just smiled. Her eyes locked on me as they dragged her away. I was only trying to save him. Her words clung to the air, poisoning it. I collapsed into Daniel's arms. It was over. The aftermath. Julia confessed to everything. The poisoning, the manipulation, the plan to take Daniel away and disappear forever. She had convinced herself that she was his real mother. That I was in the way. That I didn't deserve him. She was sentenced to life in prison. But even with her gone, her presence lingered, like a stain I could never wash away. I spent weeks in the hospital recovering. Daniel never left my side. We had survived, but the world felt colder now. Darker. I thought I knew the people in my life. I thought I could trust them. But the truth is, the real monsters don't always hide under the bed. Sometimes, they live in your home. And sometimes, they wear the face of someone you love. Story 3. The woman in the mirror. Moving into a new apartment in the city was supposed to be a fresh start. After months of searching, I finally found a place that fit my budget, a cozy 2-bedroom unit in an old but charming building. My new roommate, Ava, seemed nice enough. She was quiet, polite, and mostly kept to herself. At first, everything felt normal. The apartment had a slightly eerie feel, probably due to its age. But I brushed it off. I told myself I was just getting used to a new space. Then, the strange things started happening. The first night, after a long day of unpacking, I took a shower to wash away the exhaustion. The bathroom was small but clean, with a clawfoot tub and a large mirror above the sink. I made sure to close the shower curtain fully before stepping in. As the hot water ran over me, I let myself relax for the first time all day. When I finished, I pulled back the curtain and froze. The bathroom mirror was fogged over, but there was something wrong. In the condensation, my name was written. At first, I thought Ava must have played a prank, but when I wiped the mirror clean, the writing disappeared, leaving no trace behind. Brushing off my unease, I went to bed, telling myself it was nothing. I should have left then. The footprints. The next morning, I woke up early and walked to the kitchen. As I passed the bathroom, I noticed something that made my stomach turn. Wet footprints. They led from the shower to Ava's room. I hesitated before knocking on her door. "Ava, did you take a shower last night?" She looked up from her breakfast, her expression unreadable. "No, I went to bed early." "Why?" I stared at her, trying to figure out if she was lying. But she just sipped her coffee, completely calm. "Never mind," I mumbled. Must have been my imagination. But it wasn't, because that was only the beginning. The missing items. Over the next few days, I started noticing things going missing, small things at first. My toothbrush disappeared from its holder, only to reappear in my room, damp and tasting faintly metallic when I used it. My favorite sweater went missing, then showed up folded neatly on my bed, smelling like damp earth and something sweet, almost rotten. One night, I returned home to find the shower running. Steam billowed from under the bathroom door. Heart pounding. I knocked. "Ava, are you in there?" No response. I pushed the door open. The bathroom was empty. The mirror was fogged over again. This time, more words were scrawled into the condensation. "She doesn't see. She doesn't know." A chill ran down my spine. I turned off the water and backed out of the room, my hands shaking. Ava was hiding something. The watching eyes. That night, I barely slept. Every sound in the apartment set my nerves on edge. Around 2 a.m., a soft whispering sound pulled me from sleep. I sat up, straining to hear. The sound was coming from the bathroom. Throwing off my covers, I crept toward the door. It was slightly ajar, light spilling through the crack. Peering inside, I saw Ava standing in front of the mirror. Her hands traced slow, deliberate circles on the glass. "Ava?" I whispered. She didn't turn. She doesn't see. She doesn't know. My breath hitched. "No, what?" Her head snapped toward me. Her lips curled into a grin that didn't reach her wide, unblinking eyes. "You're up late," she murmured. I stepped back. I couldn't sleep. She took a step closer. "You should rest. Big day tomorrow." I fled to my room, locking the door behind me. I didn't sleep at all. The notebook. The next morning, I made a decision. I needed to know what was happening. While Ava was out, I went into her room. At first, it seemed normal, tidy. Almost too tidy. Her bed was neatly made, her books arranged in perfect rows. Then I opened her closet. Inside, I found my missing items. Clothes, towels, even my hairbrush, all arranged meticulously. And at the very back, I found a notebook. My stomach dropped as I flipped through the pages. It was filled with my name, over and over, scrawled in different sizes, in frantic, uneven handwriting. And then came the drawings. Sketches of my face. At first, they were normal. Then, they became distorted. Eyes too wide, mouth stretched into an unnatural grin. And underneath each drawing, a single phrase was repeated. "I want to be her." A floorboard creaked behind me. I spun around. Ava stood in the doorway. "Looking for something?" I clutched the notebook to my chest. "Why do you have my things?" She tilted her head. "I borrowed them. You have such good taste." My pulse pounded in my ears. "This isn't normal," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "You're invading my privacy." Ava stepped closer. "Privacy?" she echoed. "We're roommates. We share everything." I backed toward the door. I think I need to find a new place." Her smile faded. "You can't leave. Not when we're so close." I ran. The camera. I locked myself in the bathroom. Heart racing. I needed to call someone, the police, anyone. But then, something caught my eye. A small red light blinking in the mirror. I leaned in, realizing the horrifying truth. It wasn't a mirror. It was a two-way window. And behind it, a hidden camera. On the counter, a tablet was propped up. It was playing a video feed of me, showering, brushing my teeth, sleeping. My breath hitched. I turned just as Ava stepped into the room, blocking the door. "I've been documenting us," she whispered. My blood ran cold. "Our lives together." I shook my head, gripping the edge of the sink. "You're insane." She stepped closer, her eyes glinting eerily. "I want it all," she whispered. And then I noticed. She was wearing my clothes. Her hair, once brown, was now streaked with blonde highlights, like mine. "You're trying to become me." I breathed. Her expression darkened. "You ruined everything." She lunged at me. The escape. I fought back, knocking over the tablet. It crashed to the floor, the screen shattering. Sirens wailed in the distance. A neighbor had heard the commotion and called the police. Ava's expression twisted into pure rage. "You won't get away that easily." She lunged again, but before she could reach me, the door burst open. "Drop the weapon." The officers tackled her to the ground. She screamed. She laughed. As they dragged her away, she whispered, "We could have been perfect together." I collapsed to the floor. It was over. But even now, I still feel her eyes on me. Still hear her whispering in the walls. And sometimes, when I look in the mirror, I swear I see her standing behind me. The end. Thanks for watching. Do you love spine-chilling stories and eerie mysteries? You've come to the right place. At JT Scary Tales, we bring you the most terrifying and thrilling scary tales from around the world. From haunted places to unexplained phenomena, our scary tales will keep you on the edge of your seat. Subscribe now and dive into the dark world of scary tales.